Hello, Georgette Cars here. In this video I want to show you just a small method for doing a little bit of painting with the Impressionist painting as far as doing the sky. And I want to show you a couple of different methods, but I'm going to show you the first one. And this is a textural method, and you can do it with the palette knife or the brush. So I'm going to show you the colors that I have. I have some ultramarine blue, which is a dark blue. I have here some turquoise blue, and I have here my tea white or my titanium white. And again, you can use the same colors with watercolors, oils, or acrylics. It would just be that, of course, you would have water with your brushes, with the acrylics and the watercolors, and with the oils, you would have your linseed oil and your turpentine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this with a medium-sized brush, and again, for me this is a number 8, but depending on what company that you have the brush with, they can be different sizes. Okay, and this just happens to be a flat brush. Sometimes this could be a number 4. For this manufacturer, this happens to be an 8. But you can see it's not as large. This is a much larger brush, so this is kind of like in between. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll show you. I'm going to pick up the paint, and when I pick up the paint, I'm going to pick up some white, and I'm only picking it up on one side of the brush. And once I have my paint on the brush, I'm going to put it on little small squares here. I'm going to do it here, and you can barely see it because it's white on white. It's a little hard to see. You can see a little bit. And I did 6 squares. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my turquoise, and I'm going to go in between those spaces that I made. So now I have white, and I have blue in between, and I have white. And I'm going to keep doing that. I'm not going to clean my brush. I'm going to go back to the white, and I'm going to kind of put these spaces in between. And I'm just filling in the spaces that I left empty. And then I'm going to go back, and I'm going to pick up some more white, and I'm going to fill in those spaces. And when I fill them in, they're blending a little bit. Not all the way, but some way, in some areas. And then I'm going to go back to my turquoise. And what I do is I start getting something that looks like this. Okay? And what I can do is I can take a dry brush, and that means a brush with no paint on it whatsoever. So it has no water, no solvent, nothing. And I can go across it, and I can just blend them. And I get this type of texture happening. And on the canvas it blends better. This is just watercolor paper. Okay? And I can keep building that up, and I'll show you why that's kind of helpful. It's helpful if I wanted to do a sky, and I wanted to start off the colors, because I have a lot of texture that I'm just building up, and I can go and put white on top, and I end up with something that looks like this. So what I am is I'm just painting wet on wet. I'm just putting the colors on top of each other, and that makes these nice kind of strokes. You can see them up close, and you can keep building them on top of each other. You can keep going with the white, and you don't want to press hard. If you press hard, the colors will blend. Don't want them to blend that much. You want to see the whites and the blues, and you get this wonderful texture. Okay? I'm going to clean my brush, and I'm going to show you something else. We talked about washes earlier, and that would be if you were using oil paints, dipping your brush in your turpenoid, wiping it off on a rag, you know, picking up the color. You could re-dip it in there in your turpenoid, or you can mix a little bit of turp and the paint together and you get a wash. The same with acrylics. It's just diluting the paint. That's all it is with the solvent, okay? In this situation, if I was to dilute the paint, I'm going to use, again, a large flat brush. I'm going to dip it in my water, and I'm going to wipe it off on my rag, because I never want to have the brush dripping wet no matter what the solvent is. And then I'm going to pick up a little bit of my turquoise blue, and I'm going to put it here. And you can see how thin that color becomes. Do you see how thin that wash is? it's not really thick, and it's good when we want to do like water. It looks really realistic, and it looks very transparent. And the good thing is I can add yellow in there. I can dip my brush in water, wipe it off on my rag, pick up a little bit of yellow on my brush, and it's going to turn to green because it's mixing with the blue. But when I put it with the wash, I can get two separate colors individually, and I'll show you. You can see that yellow and that blue. Okay, so the yellow isn't overpowering the blue, and the blue isn't overpowering the yellow, and in some areas they mix, and that's a nice transition in a wash. You can also make the wash darker by picking up whatever color that you wanted. That if I started with a blue here, I might just add more blue, and I can just gradually make that wash a little bit darker as I go, and I can blend it by bringing my brush all the way up and down and making sure that blue really mixes with the color underneath, and it starts getting darker and darker. And we'll do a whole nother video on washes, but that's just the idea of doing it translucent, and try making it very smooth when you're blending the colors together, and you get that nice gradation. And you can go, if you want, from light to dark or from dark to light, but practice it. Okay, so that works really well for water and transparency. Now I'm going to clean this brush, and it's very hard to get transparency with your palette knife if you're painting with your palette knife. So what I do recommend students to have is to mix it with something called gel medium. So gel medium or gloss gel, and this you can only do with your acrylics. You can mix it with watercolors too, but it really works with acrylics. And I'll show you what it looks like. It's called gloss gel, and you really want to get the glossy kind. So it looks white, but it's actually, when you move it through, it's a gel. And you can use it as a paint extender. So that means if I had a tiny bit of acrylic paint, and I'll show you. So this is my white gloss gel right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little dot of blue. You see at the end on my palette knife? And I'm going to mix it in here, and when I mix it in here, now I have so much more blue paint. It just makes the blue paint double the amount. And students like that because they don't have to spend as much money when they're moving to a new color when they have a gel medium. They can take a tiny bit of the paint and then mix it with the gel medium and get a lot more of the color. But it also is very transparent, and I'll show you. So I'm going to put it here, and when I move it with my knife, do you see how transparent and thin that becomes? It's very thin as a wash. So let me move it a little bit closer so you can see. It's very thin. And it works well because you can put washes on top of each other. So I really recommend the gel medium. It's not as thick. Again, it's like using water, but the only difference is you keep the property of the thickness of the paint. So if you diluted your paint, right, it's going to be a wash like this. But if you get the gel medium, it still has that thickness. And that's what you want when you're doing sometimes impressionist painting or palette knife painting. You can still get a very transparent wash, but it's going to have thickness and texture. The paint will still be there. Okay, so that's something that you want to try. And I'll show you because I'll take a little bit of yellow, and I'll add some yellow to it, and we'll do it on top just so you can see. The wonderful thing is when you're using the gel medium and you're putting one color on top of another, the transparency still stays and you keep the property of the color. So now you have this transparent yellow running in with this blue, but you can still see the blue underneath because the paint isn't heavy. And you can keep doing that and building up beautiful washes of transparency with one color under another, as long as you put gel medium in between each color and let it dry. And that you can do with the acrylics, okay? So it works well with transparency. It works with building colors on top of each other. It has a lot of different uses. It also can be used with adhering things to the canvas. So that is gel medium, and this is a wash. So practice your washes. Practice going again from light to dark, and see how much control you have on the brush. And when you're doing it, it's really good to try to do it with the brush that looks a little bit square. You know, they call these brushes flat. And we'll do it one more time. So I'm just kind of dipping it in my water, wiping it off on my rag, and I'm picking up the paint, and the paint is very transparent, And you can see I have this very thin wash. Okay? And if I want to make it thicker, you know, I can just add more paint and less water, and I can go back over it. And I can make it as dark as I want, or I can feather it out to be very, very light. But try it, because it gives you a little bit about a control of the brush. And also try it like I did up here with the gel medium. Now I'm going to try it with the gel medium again, but I'm going to do it with the gel medium, and this time I'm going to do the gel medium with the paintbrush, so you can see what happens. So you know that water dilutes acrylic and watercolor paints, and turpenoid dilutes oils. Now I'm going to show you how to make it transparent with the gel medium, the same step as with the palette knife with acrylic paints. So I'm dipping my brush in my water, wiping it off on my rag, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of ultramarine blue, a little bit on the end of my brush, and I'm going to kind of move it all into my gel medium on my palette here. And now I have some at the end of my brush. And now I'm going to go here, and you'll see how light that is. It's very transparent. So I'll put it closer to the camera so you can see how light that is. Okay, and then you can add another color if you want. You can add like a yellow on top if you want. You can mix the colors and blend them together. So try that process again of using the gel medium if you have it. Try the washes and try these little textural strokes. And next I'm going to come back and we're going to move, and I'm going to do another video on textures. See you then.